What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to our JavaScript array.map example. And in this section or part, we are going to finish up our little example that we've made, and we're going to take these arrays that we have mapped and we're going to make some HTML out of them. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go into our index.html page and we're going to add a basic div, and I gave it a class of container. So now we go into our JavaScript and we select this class. And the way we do that is we're going to do a const container is equal to document dot query selector dot, because it's a class, container. And what this is doing is it's going in and it's searching for the first instant of the class container. We only have one right now, so we don't have to worry, but just in case you were going to do this on a larger scale project and maybe you have multiple containers or something of the sort, I did want to let you know that query selector does only grab the first instance of a class. If you want to do query selector and then maybe give it an ID so it's specific to that one element, then that's fine as well. But in this example, I'm going to be using class. To make sure that's working, we do console.log container. This should show us in the console an empty div, which we have right here. Now, if we would like to inject some HTML into that div, first we're going to need to map our arrays into HTML. And how to do that is we're going to do const DC heroes HTML equals DC heroes dot map. And now we can set up our new function inside this dot map that will return a template literal with HTML. So section, close it, start section. So now inside this template literal we can write our HTML and we can also inject JavaScript. So I'm going to make an H3, and inside this H3 we're going to inject JavaScript. And the way you do that inside a template literal is going to be a $, start curly brace, end curly brace. Now you can write JavaScript inside of here. So we're going to do superhero dot name. We'll do the same thing for team. So H3 superhero dot team H3. G3 H3. Okay, so now we have this new array and it's going to have some HTML. So now we can access container. So we can do container dot inner HTML to access the inner HTML. We can set it equal to DC heroes HTML. So now you can see it added our HTML to the page. But if you notice, we have this weird little comma here. We can go into our elements, we can inspect our elements, and you can see we have this comma in between each section because this array is only creating, it's only creating sections, and then something has to keep these together. So what it does is it automatically places a comma because that's how arrays are kept. As you notice up here, we have a comma in between each object. So to get rid of that comma, what we'll do is we'll use the .join method and we will put quotations and we'll enter whatever we want to replace the comma. So I'm going to put a space for an empty string. So now we can see we no longer have that comma issue. But now we can format this HTML a little better. So I'm going to do a template literal. Remember to make this some JavaScript by putting in a $, curly brace, curly brace. So now I'm going to do a div. I'm going to give this a class equal to grid container. Close the div. You can probably notice I do actually already have some CSS typed up. This isn't a CSS tutorial by any means, but I can run through the CSS. And now I'm going to set an H2, kind of give it a little heading, Justice League close the H2, and now we can save, it'll refresh, and now we can see we no longer have the commas. We have this nice little setting, or formatting, because I gave it the grid container class, which I styled inside of my CSS. And that is how you map into an array of HTML, and then turn that array of HTML into usable HTML with the dot join. Now we can do the same exact thing for the Marvel heroes. So const Marvel heroes HTML equals Marvel heroes dot map superhero arrow function starter scope return. We're going to return a template literal. This template literal is going to have a section. This section is going to have H3. The H3 is going to inject some JavaScript, so we'll do superhero.name, close the H3, go to the next line, start another H3, inject more JavaScript, superhero.team, close the H3 again, and now we have another array. But I want to show something. So if we set container.innerHTML equal to Marvel heroes, and now we know to join this, .join, even before all of our fancy formatting, I just want to show what happens. I did something wrong here. Oh, Marvel heroes HTML. So if you notice, we actually lost our DC heroes HTML. And the reason why that is because we only have container.innerHTML equal to this. So what this is saying is container.innerHTML, you're going to equal this right now. But once it gets down to this part of the code, now you're going to equal this. So to get around this, we can do a plus equals and a plus equals. Save. And now you see that we have all of our desired HTML. And now we can format this accordingly. Template literals, so we're going to start with backticks, $, curly brace, curly brace. Now we injected our HTML, or our JavaScript. Start out with a div, set that div equal with a class equal to grid container. Close the div. Create an H2 with our new header. Avengers. I'm going to save this. And now we have some sort of error going on. That's okay. Div. That's fine. So it works for everything except for Captain, or except for Iron Man. Let's see what's going on here. So we have our H2 Avengers div class container, and now we need to close the div. Save. And now we have everything working as we would like. And just to go over something real quick, this is not the preferred method, because in programming, you never want to repeat yourself. If you repeat yourself more than once, then theoretically you should be able to write a function to replace the code that you repeated. So one thing I encourage and suggest everyone to try is to rewrite all of this, but create a function that will take in an array, such as this array, and then that will perform this filter and then map method. So that way you only have to run the function to create these two, and then in the function you could do something like, so say you have the function as create array, you could do create array superheroes, and then you could set DC. That way it pulls in superheroes and then also pulls in DC. That way you know what to map for in your parameters. Similarly down here you could create an array that says create or create a function that's create HTML, and then it would be DC heroes, and then that's all you need. So do this exact thing, but for the DC heroes. That way you don't have to recreate this every time. The issue with that though, that you might run into, is you'll need some way to name the new array. Which that, I leave up to you guys to figure out. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. I will be creating more tutorials and more little projects, I guess you could say, to help learn. That's the way I learn. Yeah, I mean, I like superheroes, so I want to create a practical example. That's the end of the JavaScript. Let me jump into the CSS for anyone else that is still here. So what this does is it selects everything on my page, and then I set the margin, the padding, and the box sizing to my preferred defaults. And now that grid, or I mean that container that we have in our original HTML that everything's injected into, I went ahead and created that as a display of flex and flex direction of column. That way everything stacks on top of each other. So if we look at it, inside container we have Justice League, the first grid container, Avengers, second grid container. As you can see, they all are stacked on top of each other, which is exactly how I wanted. And then I put space around, that way it gives them kind of a centered type of look, along with the text align center. I set a container div to a margin of 14 pixels. That way it gives a little bit of space in between these divs and the H2s. Then grid container, I set display to grid, and then I set that to a column template of 30 view width, 30 view width, and 30 view width for the sections inside the grid. I justified that content to center, gave it a gap of 24 pixels. That way it shows a little bit of spacing, but not too much. Section, I gave a 5% padding, border of 3 pixels, solid, and this weird purple color. That way everything isn't touching the border. And then I just styled the text inside a little bit. It's super simple, but again, this is not a CSS tutorial. Thank you for watching again. If you're still here, I appreciate your time. Have a great one.